do we know if something is alive? It is not too difficult to tell that some things are alive, like dogs chasing tennis balls are alive, fish swimming in a lake are alive. In fact, animals are the first things we learn to recognize as living. But there are other things that are alive. All right. So what is life? Let's start with that. Things that are alive are called organisms. Any living thing is an organism, but not all organisms are animals. Plants are organisms. It is not always easy to tell that plants are alive. They don't travel, breathe, eat, or make sounds. Even so, they are alive and there are ways to figure out that they are living things. So, as I did this lesson live, we made a graphic organizer with the class, and I will show you the categories of like living and non living as we read through. But from this example, we know that organisms are things that are living. Okay, so what is life? It has to be something called an organism. So people are organisms, plants are organisms. That's what we understand. And animals are organisms. All right. So here's a picture of an osprey on the hunt. It's very nice. I like that image. So now we're going to learn about living, dead, and non living. All right. One way to look at the question, what is life, is to think about what makes life end. Every organism dies after a period of time. An organism is dead when it is no longer alive. A fish out of water will die after a short time. The fish is still there. It is still made out of the same materials, and it still looks the same as it did when it was living in the water, but it is no longer alive. This is important. Something can be dead only if it once lived. Okay, so let's pause right here and think about that. What things are dead? Can plants die? Can animals die? What does a plant look like when it is no longer alive? Okay, so we're going to explore that thought a little bit more, but we know that something is dead when it used to live. That's the only way something is dead. So can paper be dead? Is paper dead? Well, paper comes from trees. The tree that used to be alive is now dead. So paper can kind of be considered as a dead thing because it used to be alive. Okay. But what about plastic? Is plastic dead? No. Plastic is not dead. It was never alive, so it's not dead. But paper is from something that was once alive, like animal fur, coats. Those things are dead things that people wear. You know, cotton even. Cotton is a plant. So it used to be a living and growing plant, but once we take it off of its plant, it's no longer living. It's dead. What else do we take off of a tree or from a plant that used to be alive? Fruit? Vegetables? Are those considered dead because they used to grow on a plant? Interesting questions. A rock can never be dead because a rock was never alive. We describe a rock as non-living. Living organisms can be described in terms of two sets of characteristics. One is the needs or requirements that all organisms have to satisfy to stay alive. So they have needs. All living things have needs or requirements to stay alive. And the second is the functions that all organisms perform. So all organisms have needs to stay alive, and all organisms perform functions that show that they're alive. And we're going to talk about those as we go forward. All right, so this is a stink bug. All organisms have structures for exchanging gases. A stink bug takes in oxygen and releases carbon dioxide through breathing holes in its abdomen. What do living organisms need? So we're focusing on the things that living organisms need to be alive. What do you need to stay alive? It has been said that a person can live about 3 minutes without air, about 3 days without water, and about 3 weeks without food. People need air, water, and food to stay alive. So that's three things: air, water, food. You breathe air to stay alive. When you breathe in, you bring oxygen into your lungs. When it dissolves into your blood, when you breathe out, carbon dioxide, water vapor, and other gases leave your body and go into the air. So you breathe out something. And this process of moving gases into and out of your body is called gas exchange. So that's a fourth thing. All living things exchange gases. Birds do it, bees do it, lizards, fish, apes, stink bugs, and even trees do it. All living things engage in gas exchange. And the most common gases exchanged are oxygen and carbon dioxide. You drink water to stay alive. Even if you do not drink pure water, there is water in fruit, vegetables, soft drinks, milk, and everything else you eat and drink. Water is essential for life as we know it on Earth. It is just that simple. All living things need water. So that's the fifth thing of what we need. You can eat food to stay alive. Food provides energy. Energy is required to make things happen. You cannot move, breathe, see, hear, think, or do anything else without energy. All organisms use energy to live. Okay? The process of living creates byproducts that are of no use to the organism. In fact, many byproducts are dangerous to the organism if they build up. For this reason, organisms must get rid of waste products. These might be gases, liquids, or solids. All organisms eliminate waste. So you might not think about it, but in order for something to be living, it has to eliminate waste from its body or its structures. So plants do that, and animals do it too. They get rid of gases, liquids, or solids. It is a universal truth that everything has to be somewhere. That somewhere for an organism is its environment. Every organism lives in an environment that can fulfill its needs. Organisms have adaptations that allow them to live in their environment. So again, organisms have to be in a place. Humans live in houses. Scorpions live in deserts. Birds live in trees. And all of those places allow them to survive. So they have to be able to live in a place that they are able to adapt to and survive in. The oceans or lakes are suitable environment for fish, which have adaptations such as gills and fins. The desert is suitable environment for scorpions, the forest for maple trees, fresh water and moist soil for paramecia, and so on. If the environment is not suitable, an organism will not survive. Some organisms form protective spores or capsules to survive unfavorable times. These spores do not appear to be living. They are dormant. Okay, so something that does not appear to be living is called dormant. So that's our third category. We've gone through living, dead, and now we're talking about dormant. Okay, so something that does not appear to be living, but it is living because it's protecting itself from the environment. So spores, when you hear spores, you don't really know what that is, but usually that refers to mold. So mold is a living thing that lies dormant until it can grow and survive in the environment. So mold is around us all the time. The spores are around us everywhere because it can grow anywhere at any point in time. Until the environment is suitable, it won't seem alive or appear to exist at all. And trees go through a dormant phase, especially right now since it's fall. They're preparing to go into a dormant phase of their life, which happens in winter. And that's how they stay alive. But when suitable circumstances exist, they suddenly start to exhibit the characteristics of life. They were always living, but now you can tell. 5 basic needs are common to all living organisms. They are the need for gas exchange, for water, for energy from food, to eliminate waste, and for a suitable environment. So those are the 5 ways we know, the 5 basic needs of living organisms. Okay, so this next section talks about the functions. So what do living organisms do? Once an organism's basic needs are met, it gets on with the process of life. When things happen in the environment, organisms respond. All organisms respond to the environment. The fish swims away when the sea lion comes by. The scorpion scurries under a rock when the sun heats up the ground. The sugar maple tree's leaves turn orange and fall off in fall. These are all responses to the environment. When organisms start life, they are small. As time passes, they get bigger. An increase in size is called growth. The chemical building blocks for growth come from food and water, and from the environment in the form of minerals. All organisms grow. Organisms do not live forever. To ensure that the species, a kind of organism, survives, living organisms must make new organisms of their kind. They reproduce. Now, every individual organism will reproduce, but every population of organisms reproduces to keep the species going. All organisms respond to the environment, grow, and reproduce. So that's the three things that living organisms do, and that's how you know that they are alive. One last characteristic. There is actually one more characteristic common to all living organisms. That characteristic is not discussed in this article, but will be introduced in the near future. Can you think of what characteristic that might be? It's true of you, it's true of turtles and beetles, it's true of elm trees and mosses, and it's true of all the tiny organisms too small to see with the naked eye. Sometimes it is difficult to decide if something is alive. A car driving down the road exchanges gases, and a washing machine needs water. A burning candle uses energy, and a fire gives off waste. A smoke alarm responds to the environment. Clouds grow, and the US Mint produces new dollar bills all the time. One characteristic, or even three or four, does not qualify an object to join the ranks of the living. To qualify as a living organism, an object must meet all 8 criteria. Okay, so living things. These are the 5 things that we pulled out from the article that prove that things are living. Any living thing is an organism. Plants and animals are organisms. All living things die at a period of time. Functions, things they do. Needs, what they do need to stay alive. Okay, so all living things have this. Something can be dead only if it once lived. Dormant, forms spores or capsules to survive, cannot tell they are alive for unfavorable times in the environment. So, and living things go into this phase of life if they are trying to survive, basically. And non-living is something that was never alive, and there's a lot of things that fall into that category, right? And then these are the characteristics of life that we learned about, the 8. They all have gas exchange, they all need water, all organisms need energy, all living things release waste, all organisms live in an environment that meets their needs, all organisms respond to their environment, all organisms grow, and all organisms reproduce. In order for something to be alive, it has to do all 8. And that is the lesson today. So thank you for your time, and I hope you learned something.